Hey guys, and welcome to this month's Karen Corner episode. I'm Sarah Martin, and this is Claire Farless with the Triple AD.
Welcome to the Managing Stress Workshop. We'd like to start off by introducing ourselves. I'm Claire Farless.
And I'm Sarah Martin.
Today's presentation is based upon the Powerful Tools for Caregivers program, a self-care education program for family caregivers. There are over 4,500 class leaders across the United States and in Canada and Korea. The class curriculum is available in English, French, Korean, and Spanish. Since the program's inception, a great deal of research, evaluation, and revision has been done to ensure the program's continued value and success. The 6 weeks Powerful Tools for Caregivers class has been shown to have a positive impact on caregiver health for a diverse group of caregivers, including rural, ethnic minorities, adult children of aging parents, well spouses and partners, caregivers at different stages in their caregiving role, life situations, financial and educational backgrounds. Data from class participant evaluations indicates that the Powerful Tools for Caregivers program improves self-care behaviors, so it's increased exercise, use of relaxation techniques, and medical checkups. Management of emotions is reduced guilt, anger, and depression. Efficiency, so it's increased confidence in coping with caregiving demands. Use of community resources, increase the utilization of community services. The program uses a script to ensure the program maintains the same positive outcomes for family caregivers, and at the same time, the same information is covered whenever it is offered. Today, we will be focusing on tools that will help you to manage the daily stressors and challenges you face as a family caregiver. Our agenda today for managing stress presentation, we're going to go over challenges, the acute versus chronic, managing stress, identifying signs and sources, taking action, our stress reducers, making an action plan, and then relaxation and the close of the presentation. So address your stress is the main purpose of this presentation. So an important part of the Powerful Tools for Caregivers program is sharing and learning from each other. Normally, when we do this presentation in person, we would ask the participants to identify what type of caregiving role that they take, and also what their caregiving situation might be, and just them adding in their experiences during caregiving.
And the next section is going to be the challenges of caregiving, acute versus chronic illnesses. Caregiving to someone with a chronic illness requires a different mindset than caring for someone with an acute illness. With an acute illness, such as the flu, pneumonia, or appendicitis, we often set aside our own lives until the illness passes. This approach is not an effective plan, however, when our family member has a chronic illness, such as stroke, Alzheimer's disease, or Parkinson's disease. So on this chart here, we're going to break down the differences between acute illness and chronic illness. So with an acute illness, there are cures available. Treatments are available to heal and to restore a person's health. However, with a chronic illness, there are no cures. So no treatment will take the illness away. However, in many cases, a lot can be done to manage a chronic illness. At times, the illness may be under control, and at other times, it's not. With acute illnesses, they're typically short-term. Our lives are changed for a few days, but the problems usually tend to go away. And with a chronic illness, they're usually long-lasting, so they have an ongoing impact, and the problems do not go away. As a chronic illness progresses, caregiving responsibilities often increase as well. With an acute illness, we usually see the person's health and everyone's lives return to normal. With a chronic illness, though, this often means that a permanent change from what was. And both care receivers and caregivers have to make adaptations in their lives. With an acute illness, you're usually dealing with certainty in regards to the future, and the outcomes of those acute illnesses are generally predictable. However, with a chronic illness, usually there's some uncertainty about the future. A chronic illness can lack a predictable pattern. Long-term effects may be hard to predict. So what you need to remember here is acute illnesses are not the same as chronic illnesses. And as this chart shows, an acute illness is not the same as a chronic illness. Therefore, using identical caregiving approaches, for example, setting our lives aside when our family member has a chronic illness, is not appropriate. In fact, it can be damaging. Being a caregiver for the long haul of a chronic illness requires that we take care of ourselves. Usually, we cannot stop the impact of a chronic illness on a family member. However, we are responsible for our own self-care. It's critical that we don't become a second victim of our family member's illness. It's sad when a person says, "My mother was the ill person, but her illness destroyed my father." It is not selfish to think about your own health and well-beings as caregivers. When you take control of yourself, everyone benefits.
Managing stress. Stress is the reaction we experience when the demands placed on us are too much to cope with. While some stress can be positive, too much stress can affect us in a negative way, both physically and emotionally. One of the most important things we can do, both for ourselves and for our friend or family member, is to take care of ourselves. It's important that you thrive, not just survive. An important tool for thriving is being able to recognize and manage stress. On our chart here, we have the steps to managing stress. Number 1, recognize warning signs early. It's easy and more helpful to make changes early to reduce stress. If we wait until we are overwhelmed, it takes longer to recover from the effects of stress. So number 2, identify sources of stress. We must ask ourselves, what is causing stress for me? What causes the most stress for each of us may be quite different. Number 3, identify what you can and cannot change. This involves asking the following questions. What do I have some control over? What can I change? Even a small change can make a big difference. However, if we try to change things over which we have no control, we only increase our stress and frustration. And number 4, take action. Taking some action to reduce stress gives us a sense of control. So don't ignore it and do address it. Taking these 4 steps to reduce stress is critical to our self-care. Both the caregiver and the care receiver benefit. We are more likely to be patient and loving when we are taking good care of ourselves. We will now talk about our own signs and sources of stress, and then we're going to discuss some tools for managing stress. So it's very important to recognize and manage our own stress. If we don't, it's hard to do anything else. Identifying signs and sources of stress. Each one of us has warning signs that tell us we are experiencing stress. If we identify and respond to our early warning signs, we can prevent the destructive impact of stress. Too often, however, we do not recognize the early warning signs or we ignore them. As we look at what is stressful in giving and receiving care, it can be quite different for each one of us. On our chart, we have some of the most commonly heard warning signs of stress and sources of stress. So the more common signs of stress is forgetfulness, irritability, eat more, get sick, cry easily, can't concentrate, just don't care, headaches, high blood pressure, and resentfulness. Some sources of stress can be too much to do, repeated questions, spouses say, I want to go home, family disagreements, lack of sleep, unreasonable expectations, irritability, inability to say no, and lack of help from siblings. Identifying your personal warning signs and sources of stress can be very helpful. Remember, the earlier we identify our warning signs, the better. Some of the signs that we identified earlier may not be our earliest warning signs. They may be the signs that finally catch our attention. It's important that we pay attention to our earliest warning signs and respond to them.
Warning signs of stress, they can be physical, emotional, or mental. And if we would neglect our warning signs, problems will develop. Results of neglecting stress include increased health problems. Stress affects the immune system. It increases our vulnerability to illness, and it can worsen existing medical problems. Neglecting stress can disrupt relationships as well. Stress can cause a breakdown in communication with others. Stress-related emotions such as irritability and anger often adversely affect our relationships. Burnout. This is a total physical and emotional exhaustion, a feeling of being totally overwhelmed and not being able to cope. Neglecting stress can lead to depression. And depression can range from just feeling down to feeling hopeless. In the 5th class of our Powerful Tools for Caregivers program, we talk about those emotions and including depression. And then lastly, neglecting stress can decrease our quality of life. Ignoring stress can decrease our quality of care. Stress can decrease our ability to give good care and to give care in a loving way. So when we ignore our stress, it festers and it gets worse. Stress is a fact of caregiving. We can't eliminate it, but we can manage stress. It's important to manage our stress so it does not control us. We have completed the first 2 steps in managing stress. Number 1, identifying warning signs of stress. Number 2, identifying the sources of stress. The third important step in managing stress is to clearly identify what you can change and what you cannot change. We only increase our stress and frustration if we try to change things over which we have no control. Have you ever said, if only they would change? It's important to remember we can only change ourselves and that we cannot change another person. Sometimes this means we need to let go. We will now talk about tools for reducing stress. We'll consider what we can do so we can better tolerate the unchangeable stresses in our lives.
Taking action, stress reducers. The 4th step in dealing with stress is to take action. We gain nothing if we only identify our warning signs and sources of stress. We must actively do something to reduce our stress. Unfortunately, it's easy to get tangled up in the barriers. On our chart, you will see a list of barriers to taking action. Barriers to taking action frequently include, I can't think of what to do. Choosing a difficult activity. This is selecting a stress reducing activity that is too involved, too awkward, too time consuming, or you don't really want to do it. Next, postponing stress reduction. For example, this occurs when a stress reduction activity is planned too far into the future. For example, you need to get away, so you plan a weekend at the beach for 3 months from now. This is a positive step, but if you need a break now, waiting 3 months may be too long. It's important to recognize, then remove barriers to taking your action. Stress reducers are activities that help us to relax, are soothing and pleasurable, make us feel good. We can build into our lives on a regular basis. A stress reducer doesn't have to be elaborate. Just a few minutes a day doing something relaxing and enjoyable can help us deal better with stress. On our chart, we have listed some of the most common stress reducers that we have heard about what you can do. So these, for an example, you can go for a walk. It may be simply saying no to an activity, meditation, going out to eat with a friend, exercising, and so on. You can see the rest of them are listed on our chart. But what I want you to keep in mind is stress reducers are very personal. Any activity that reduces stress for one person may not be a stress reducer for another person. It's personal, and it's what suits you.
Sometimes it's helpful to match our stress-reducing activity to our way of responding to stress. For example, if your response to stress is mostly physical, like high blood pressure, digestive problems, headaches, or pacing, you may want to try physical relaxation activities such as walking, swimming, or other physical exercise, a massage, a bubble bath, or gardening. So if you experience stress mostly in mental ways, for example, you worry a lot or having difficulty concentrating, you may want to try some mental relaxation activities such as meditation, listening to a relaxation tape or soothing music, or reading for pleasure. If your style of responding to stress is both mental and physical, you may want to try an activity that can involve both, such as practicing yoga or Tai Chi. There are many ways to reduce stress, and what is important is finding what is pleasurable and works for you. The little things we do to relieve stress can make a big difference. Making an action plan. An action plan is an agreement or contract with yourself to do something you want to do that will help you reach a goal. Parts of an action plan. A good action plan has several parts. It includes, number 1, something you want to do. An action plan is to be something you want to do. It is not something that you or someone else thinks that you should do. Select something that will help you feel better and to take better care of yourself. An action plan is to be a want to do and not a should do. The second part of an action plan is it being reachable. An action plan is to be something you can easily complete during the next week. We want you to succeed. It's important to be realistic about what you can do. Number 3, behavior specific. The more specific you can be about what you will do, the better. For example, taking better care of myself is not a specific behavior. Making an appointment for a physical checkup, walking 3 times a week, or asking someone to stay with your care receiver for one morning are all specific behaviors. Number 4, parts of an action plan answers these questions. What? What are you going to do? For example, I will read a book for pleasure, or I will walk. It also answers how much. How much are you going to do? For example, maybe read 1 chapter or go for a walk 2 blocks. The next question that it answers is when. When will you do this? For example, read first thing in the morning before I get out of bed, or walk in the mid-afternoon when mother is sleeping. And the last question that it answers is how often. How often will you do the activity? For example, 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's better to commit to do something 2 or 3 times a week and exceed your action plan than commit to do something every day and fail because you only did it 6 days and not 7. It's important to set yourself up for success. And the 5th thing is our confidence level. This is how confident or certain you are that you will accomplish your entire action plan during the next week. You were to rate your confidence level on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 means that you are not confident that you will be able to accomplish your action plan during the next week. 10 means you're very confident that you will complete your entire action plan during the next week. And remember, action plans are to help you. We are to thrive while caregiving.
In closing, based on today's presentation, we hope you remember these 4 items. It is critical to take care of yourself. It's important to identify warning signs and sources of stress. It's important to take action to relieve your stress. And last, action plans are a tool to help you reduce stress.
All right, guys, so that ends our presentation for today. If you have enjoyed today's Caring Corner episode and you're interested in joining our next 6-week training course, that is going to be beginning in March. It's going to be on Tuesdays for the next 6 weeks, starting at 12 and going until 1:30. So email us if you have any more questions or are interested in that, and we would be happy to talk with you about signing you up for our next Powerful Tools series class. Thank you and have a great day.